Bravo 6, going dark.
Let's talk about Christmas. So this year I do not have a prototype Raptor style winter themed like Christmas track. I got the Halloween one done and I was really happy with that. I have a bunch lined up for next year, which I think will be cool to have like more consistent releases. But for, the end of the year, I wanted to do something seasonal, something Christmassy. So I figured what I would do is show y'all one of my commercial tracks. So I do not do Prototype Raptor full-time. My primary job, day job if you will, is as a media composer. I write for libraries and sync, like commercial type stuff. And so one of the projects that I did a couple years ago was for Call of Duty. They wanted a Christmas medley of public domain songs with a whole bunch of Call of Duty elements incorporated. So sound effects and the soundtrack itself and voice clips and, the whole thing. It was all synced up to a house with all the crazy Christmas lights on the house, like it's all synced up to that. It turned out really cool. I really enjoyed being a part of that project, but it's really Christmassy. It's still coming from me, so it's a little bit, silly and tongue-in-cheek. So I figure I'll just show y'all that, and then I'll see you next year for more Prototype Raptor stuff, hopefully. Fingers crossed. Like, I have so much working, but my time manager skills are so bad. It's me. I'm the problem. So let's get started. All right, let's talk about this monstrosity for a second. This is a giant project file, and at any given time, you can leave this video and just go watch the final product. I won't be mad. This is a lot to get through. So I think, did I break 200? Yep, we have 202 final tracks here, most of which is orchestral and sound effects. So the initial pitch from Call of Duty, the brief that they wanted is 4 holiday medleys. They all have to be public domain, so you don't have to pay the licensing rights. And then it needs to be one continuous track that all kind of flows together. And then it needs to have Call of Duty sound effects. They wanted, if you were able to tune an engine so that way it could play the melody of a song, that was what they were looking for. So starting off, I have just a little intro, like a filter in.
Bravo 6, going dark.
So right off the bat, I knew I wanted this to be tongue-in-cheek, right? The concept itself is a little bit silly. It's fun. It's Christmas plus like you're shooting people in the head, right? It's not like a very serious Call of Duty trailer. It's more like in the Zombies franchise. And like I grew up playing a bunch of Call of Duty, so I knew, all the themes and I knew what I wanted to do with this. So you can see here, the first thing they did was they sent me over a ton of sound effects and those in-game audio clips, right? Like right at the start, I knew I wanted the man himself. Let's see if I even find it. Where is it? Yeah, Mr. Price.
Bravo 6, going dark.
So just a whole bunch of cleared voiceovers to use as transitions. And I knew the first track would have to be Jingle Bells, and it is orchestrated the normal way with your little, what'd you call it, in the flutes and the like celeste and things. But the difference here is I tuned all of these bullet impact sound effects, and those are the primary like percussion layers. So it's just a funny way to incorporate those elements of Call of Duty right at the start. For the actual orchestral stuff, I use a combination of a whole bunch of things. But in this one, I'm using the free Abbey Road woodwinds. It's got a really nice layered sound. When I'm doing orchestral stuff, the answer to a lot of like how do you make things sound professional and deep is I'm not very good at the John Williams style orchestration where you're really relying on your players and everything is very precise and technical and beautifully orchestrated. I'm trying to get a certain timbre that sounds professional. So I will end up doing a lot of layering of different sorts of sample libraries in order to get the texture and the timbre that I am looking for. So there's 2 string layers there. So that's the end of the Jingle Bells section. And I knew for a lot of the transitions, instead of using cymbals or any sort of bass drum hits, like normal auxiliary orchestral percussion stuff, I was going to use the Call of Duty sound effects, right? The impacts, the explosions. So you'll see here, instead of like a long cymbal roll, I'm using the cruise missile travel. So instead of having any sort of normal riser, you're just using the Call of Duty sound effects. And I do that a lot in here. Which, man, the Call of Duty sound effects, their team, whoever is on there, they are so good. It's like, you just drag and drop these in. I'm like, I have no idea how these sound as good as they do. All right, so next up, we have Carol of the Bells. You'll see here, I have transitioned. Ableton makes it pretty easy compared to FL Studio. I've transitioned from 4/4 to 3/4 right here. No drop bars, nothing necessary. It's just straight into it. And there's also a tempo change, right? So during these transitions, I knew when I was able to incorporate the original Call of Duty themes, I would. They didn't ask for this. I grew up playing these games, right? And I knew like the menu screens and I knew the main themes. And like, I think it was Call of Duty 2 that Hans Zimmer wrote that song. So I wanted to try to incorporate them as best as I can in the Christmas medleys. And for several of these, they're in minor. A lot of, modern music is in minor and a lot of Christmas music is in major. So I knew during this Carol of the Bells section, I would have to really if I was going to do that, this would be the time. So this right here is a arrangement of the original Call of Duty 4 music mashed up with Carol of the Bells. And of course, I'm using the same sort of Call of Duty sound effects to do the risers, the layers. You've got the assault drone here, and I think this is the beep. I really tried to incorporate multiple equipment and various effects over this whole thing. But yes, I knew I had to put in the original soundtrack if I could. You'll see I'm doing the layering trick with these. So the brass, right? There is the primary sort of staccato layer here. But I'm also layering it with these legato solo instruments. So that's a trick that I picked up from, way better orchestrators than me, is you can have like a semi sort of fake sounding patch of ensemble units, and then you use a really good sounding legato instrument as sort of the first chair, and that adds another layer of texture. It sells it a little bit. trumpet comes in. And for all the layering, I actually use a really old library that I haven't really found a better version of yet. I just really like the sound of it. This is the East West Hollywood Orchestra, the original. So I really like the way that a lot of these first chair legatos, the strings, all of those, they sound really good. A lot of the times they don't stand up on their own, but when you layer them in with a more modern like contact library, they just add some of that old school presence. It's really nice. So now we're at the big climax of this section. And again, instead of timpanis, I'm using the Call of Duty sound effects here, so you can hear the... When you're doing these sorts of epic things, you want octaves. You're trying to emphasize space between all of the instruments, right? So keeping your bass and your cellos in octaves, keeping everything like less closed, open voicing. That is what lets you have a much like brighter, more tooty type sound. I'm also doing the Hans Zimmer trick of layering in a synth part. And that has a little bit of a glide to it because the legato transitions are what really sell that sort of organic sound. So if I take this away... It's a very subtle thing, but those are the sorts of like natural motion between notes is what a real player would do, and it does sell things quite a bit. Another trick that I should mention that I picked up from some better composers is using just a sine wave, like a sub layer in these sorts of things. When you are writing the sorts of epic orchestral music, there's not really any information below 100 hertz, maybe even 150 hertz, depending on how close the mics are to the players. So you just layer in with a nice sine wave, it fills out the LFE, and it's like it sits a little bit better in modern mixes, like modern sensibilities. Is it natural? No, but none of this is natural, so we're just writing what sounds cool, I guess, at this time. All right, so next up, we've got the next Call of Duty theme. This is the Modern Warfare 2 one, I'm pretty sure. So I smoothed over that transition from 3.4 back to 4.4 with the tank turning sound effect there and just a bunch of the Call of Duty little, again, like just using what they sent me. But you can hear here, this is where it goes back. And now we've moved into Winter, which is the next Christmas medley track. For this one, I thought it would be cool to use more of the suppressor elements, like keep it a little bit more tighter, and then have it explode. So I'm using all of these like AR4, suppress fire. I'm using a lot of the atmosphere takes instead of the close range ones, so it isn't as punchy. Because man, again, those up close mics for those guns are ridiculously loud.
These things take violence and timing. I can do both.
So of course there I did end up using cymbals for real. Those are not from Call of Duty. Very similar. So like all of these layers is string staccatos just to make it sound full and the texture rich. There's your sub. So again, without having a real chamber orchestra, it's really hard to get that sort of like tight attack, like exactly how you want the thing to sound. So you kind of have to compensate and go a little bit nuts to make it sound even close to how it would with real players. There's also an organ in there. Organs are a great way to fill out a background texture without using like a synth, because they're nature's first synthesizer, right? And then, of course, there is the gun sync. So what I did was I loaded up all of the round-robin weapon sound effects. So each one of these is a different gun. I loaded them into a drum rack. And then all of a sudden, you have playable round-robins. So you can sit here and go. It just is a lot simpler than trying to line up all the attacks. So what I did is I just went in and then I played the parts and then I arranged it how I wanted it to be. So that you wind up with this as your gun sync instead of a bunch of clips. Right. And then, of course, the cymbals. There are real cymbals in this one. I did use some samples, but the actual, reverses and the layers that fill out those cymbals are, again, like the fuel bombs and all the impacts that they gave me. Like the incoming mortar ones. It's really cool. Then we have another transition. This is just some Christmassy sounding transition music. But I am using here the Bunker Buster Explosions as timpanis. I tuned these, which I thought was pretty funny. I didn't know if they expected them to ever be tuned quite like that. All right, so our next section is Deck the Halls. I used one of the sound clips as a little transition to get into it, and then this one I took more electronic, so I used like an orchestral D&B sound, I would say. So you can see a lot of the weapon sync in this one is actually a little bit more intricate just because I'm using the Call of Duty sound effects. I wanted to use them as like the D&B ghost notes that you would get in like a break. So you have this sort of thing. And then during the middle, I knew it would be like there'd be a quote going dark, and we could filter everything down, make like a little moment there.
Going dark.
Here I tuned, this is the kill confirm tag. So that's just tuned, and then you just play it. Then these are the headshot sound effects, just again emphasizing like the various points and using them as the percussion elements instead of like a snare drum or any normal like hybrid percussion. So maybe one other thing to talk about in this section is you might have noticed the drums aren't nearly as punchy and loud as you would expect in drum and bass. Like, they're okay. But that was on purpose because I found out over the years that it's really a give and take. So, like, if I made the drum and bass drums as loud and as punchy as a regular drum and bass, like, release, the sound effects would get buried. The melody from the Christmas song would get buried. So, you're choosing what elements you want to bring out, and you kind of need to then bury the other elements to give what you want to shine a time to shine, if that makes sense. So it really is, a mix is just a compromise, and so the compromise in this section was it would be drum and bass flavored, but not like up to like noisiest standards or anything. Not that I could like get there, but you know. So, moving on. All right, for the next section, it's the last section. It's the big one, and we're using the New Year's Eve song, like the New Year, Auld Lang Syne, however you say it. It's the classic New Year's song from overseas. I think it's a Scottish one. So in this one, I wanted this kind of to sound like fireworks. So I used a lot of like the thermal weapon stuff. So there's like little debris in there. There's thermite. And then I tuned it's a cluster spike pulse. I tuned that, and then that is playing the melody at the start. It's funny. It's funny to me. And then you've got all the little textural stuff coming from the fire elements. Which again, it's so good. It's so crispy.
Money, weapons, intel. He's planning something.
So this is the big like finale. This is where they synced up all the lights to the house, and there's like drones flying around, and it's, fireworks. It's crazy. So I'm really just trying to hit the ones. So the start of every measure, and I'm trying to, go rise into them and have them fall, just big crashing cymbal moments. So I'm using, again, like explosions, missiles incoming. There's the gun sync still going, which is using the same racks from the winter gun sync, and then just adding more and more layers of orchestral stuff as it goes on. This right here, I tuned the AR, the whiz? It's like the ricochet past you. I tuned that to what the trumpet is playing. So you've got a nice, fun little... little throwback to the Call of Duty theme.
We're not 141 and lost for chaos. We're team.
Bring in the choir, bring it all home. This uses the same sort of stuff where it's like these are all tuned Call of Duty sound effects. And this is the kill alert that I have looping down here. And then this is the missile travel. Big finish.
Stay frosty.
Of course, you have to end with that clip, right? They give it to you for a Christmas song. You gotta use it. So a lot of this just ends kind of like your traditional trailer way. There's just, you've got your melody, there's a little break here, you get more, and then you have a little bit of cut up rhythmic stuff at the end. So you've got like here. Right. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in context, but if you're thinking about, what could editors be cutting to? What could like you be editing like scene transitions or various like sync stuff. So I just try to give people stuff to cut to that's cool. So that's kind of how this whole thing went. And of course the very end is an airplane coming in for a strike. It's just classic trailer vibes. So that is my silly little Call of Duty holiday thing. You can watch the video. It's been up for a while on their official website, but now you know who did the music, what it looks like, the project, and this was a fun one to work on. I enjoy this sort of thing, and I'm sure there's more I missed in here because this is just a ridiculously huge track. But hopefully that will get you through your Christmas. You'll have a good new year, and then I will see you back for more Prototype Raptor stuff next year. And until then, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, yada, yada, yada. Drink the eggnog, watch your favorite movies, be with your family, or don't be with your family if that's how you go. And then I will catch you next year. Bye, y'all.